Today's episode is a conversation about a lot of things. Art, politics, religion. It's about being black in America, on the streets, in the prison system, at home, and even in Elliott, Maine. It's also about the fundamental unity of all things, but, isn't everything? We're talking to Najee Brown today. He is a playwright, director, producer, actor, and a current artist in residence at Greenacre, which is of a high school in Maine founded in 1894. The administrator there, Robert Sapiro, joined our conversation to talk a little bit about Greenacre itself and their intentions behind staging a production of Najee's play, The Bus Stop, which is about 5 black women arguing with and supporting one another while waiting for a bus to visit their husbands, fathers, and sons in prison. It was a while before we got around to talking about the play, though. Najee's from Brooklyn, and he first visited Greenacre a couple of years ago to help develop a project called Glimmerings of Hope.
The plan for this musical was for students in Flint, and they were going to take this musical to Flint and teach kids about their nobility through the story of child soldiers in Africa. And if you can understand how child soldiers in Africa are noble, then you can understand that you're noble too, even though you're going through this water crisis. And literally teaching kids about unity and the power. It was a powerful experience. It didn't actually happen until about a year later. But working on that experience led me to Elliott twice.
Meanwhile, he's going back and working in Brooklyn as a teaching artist and a dance instructor. And then he ends up in a play in Edinburgh, Scotland, which sounds totally bizarre on its face, but Edinburgh's a big theater town, so it's actually a lot less weird than being in Elliott, Maine. Anyway, that Scottish play, not Macbeth, the musical he was in Scotland, which is called Henry Box Brown, which is a true story about an escaped slave who later became a traveling magician, it was a huge hit. Obviously, it was. Did you hear me say it's about a man who escaped slavery and became a magician? Hell yes, I will take 100 tickets.
We had one of the best plays in Edinburgh, Scotland. We had a sold out 250-seat house almost every night, at least 225 people there every night. And I was meeting with, all types of people from the West End, people from Broadway, who all wanted to, know who I was because I'm not the usual theater person. And it was interesting. And I had a BBC interview and I was like, okay, this is great. Finally getting to where I wanted to go, but it didn't feel real. And I knew I wasn't ready. And I went through a little anxiety about it. And nothing seemed like I was on the right path. I had no direction. I was sad every day. I was having all this opportunity, but I was miserable.
So he calls up a mentor, this guy, Jeff Albert. Jeff was the guy who first brought Najee to Elliott for that Flint play, and he suggests that he go there again with no particular assignment and no time frame this time, just to cool his heels.
And he said, go there. You can serve in the kitchen. You can relax. You can figure out your life. And as a black person in America, you often don't get the time that most people get to figure out their lives. I've been working since I was 14 years old, balancing a job. As soon as I got working papers, I was working in the summer. Once I turned 16, I was working every day after school. So it was the idea of college, and it was a lot. You never had the chance to even figure out what you wanted to do. You know how people have those gap years and they could try out and waste $50,000 on a semester of college. I didn't have that. It was all about, what are you doing? You're not doing anything. So the idea of coming here kind of felt like I was finally going away to college. And, I never took a college class in my life that I had to pay for. I would sneak into NYU and St. John's and City College just to be around college students and have class discussions and learn more. So it felt like college. Went to New York. Packed up my apartment. It took about a week for the process to go through, which was great. Packed up my apartment, stayed with my mom for a few days, and I came here.
So just to recap this on the map. So you started in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Brooklyn to Elliott, aiming at Flint, right?
Yeah.
To Scotland.
Yeah.
back to New York.
Yeah.
Back to Elliot.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Did you get involved in like some kind of like freaking flyer?
No.
Before all this
Oh,
went
I
down?
wish. No, it's
Would have
not.
been a good idea.
It would have probably been a good
It'd be
idea.
like platinum status.
Probably not since I've been here though, because I haven't been going much. I only been back to New York once.
Yeah, and you've been here how long now?
I've been here since September 5th.
So going into this interview, I really had no idea what the Baha'i faith was all about. The facility, Greenacre, I gathered it was sort of a conference center / spiritual retreat, which worked with individuals and businesses and community groups with an eye towards social justice, particularly racial equality. I just Googled Baha'i faith and I learned that it was a religion that stressed the value of all religions and the fundamental unity and equality of all people. I guess the thing to know about them is, yeah, they believe in the oneness of all people and they actually act accordingly, seemingly unencumbered by politics or religious judgment. Which is pretty rare.
So I'm Robert Shapiro, and I'm the administrator here at Greenacre, which is a Baha'i Center of Learning. Greenacre has actually been part of the community since the 1890s.
Greenacre was founded by this woman named Sarah Farmer, basically as a summer camp for religious and social leaders. One of Greenacre's first financial supporters was Phoebe Hearst, mother of William Randolph Hearst. Hundreds of notable philosophers and monks and philanthropists and suffragettes and priests and evolutionists came through in the years that followed. Farmer wasn't even a follower of the Baha'i faith when the school was founded. She actually encountered it on a trip a couple of years later and found that it perfectly fit with the vibe she pretty much already had going on. The Baha'i faith itself started in Persia in the 1860s, a time when it was pretty radical to reject racism and would soon be pretty radical to reject nationalism, both of which the Baha'i faith did from the jump. Today there are about 6 million followers of the Baha'i faith in 235 countries. It's the second most geographically widespread religion behind Christianity, which is all the more impressive since no population is born and assigned Baha'i as their default religion, as they are with Christianity and Islam. Now, I looked up some criticisms of Baha'i too, just to do my due diligence, and most of the issues people have with it sound more like positives. The government of Iran sees them as a political threat, and some early statements by Baha'i leaders which seem contrary to modern science were based on contemporary misunderstandings in the scientific community. So Baha'i writings about matters like evolution were consistent with what evolutionists thought at the time, and Baha'is acknowledge that comments by their early leaders and prophets should not be regarded as infallible when it comes to scientific matters, which seems like a very smart loophole that other religions should consider adopting.
Here at Greenacre these days, we do a variety of programming and a variety of kind of different activities. So our typical thing is we have a group of folks come for a weekend. And they'll study a particular topic, they'll explore a particular issue. We typically have folks coming, as they would say in Maine, coming from away, right? So you got people coming from a different place, they come stay with us. We can have about 130 people stay over for a program. But one of the things we realized is we wanted to strengthen our contribution to the Seacoast community. Realizing the buildings are here all week. We spent a lot of time in the last couple of years trying to think about how can we contribute to the dialogue around the opiate crisis and to addiction and mental illness. We've always been a place that's been talking about race, this idea of race amity, interracial friendship. Since the early days of Greenacre, that's been a constant theme. We had, there's a fellow named Louis Gregory, who was one of the earliest African-American lawyers in the country, and who became a follower of the Baha'i faith, and he and his wife, he married interracially. He spent his last years here in Elliott, partly because he and his wife, this was one of the few places they could be married. So this has always been a gathering place of that sort. So we've been in the last number of years had ongoing conversations about race and interracial friendship and sort of what is it that we can contribute towards building unity and justice at the same time. One of the things that we realized in the last year or two has been the current shape of our discourse has some strengths to it, but it also has some real limitations. We only kind of get so far. We only get certain groups of people in the room. We don't necessarily go further. We've always explored the arts as well in various ways, and we had initially separately, we had a series of art shows. We realized, we need to be able to combine these things. That a conversation about race goes much further when you combine the arts, whether it's the visual arts, whether it's sculpture, whether it's theater arts. Because what ends up happening is you've got some folks who can say things that they can't say in conversations easily. And you've got other folks who can hear things that they can't hear in conversation. And then when you have that something external to you, you can then engage in a new conversation where things have been expressed, things have been heard, that, you know, oftentimes the limits of our current way don't allow us. So.
Yeah, I've never heard it put quite that way, but that's
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Look, oh, he's speaking good stuff right now.
Well, I've learned.
You have to turn that off, right? When you're doing podcast interviews, right? The biggest thing to resist is when you're like, "Oh, I'm going to use that part for sure." Can't think that way.
Can't think that way at all.
At any given time on this podcast, I feel like I'm always trying to answer 2 or 3 big questions. Early on, they were simpler questions. How does technology affect creativity? What is the right way to ask someone a question? How do the people that I encounter see the world? Then, they were more personal questions. How can you gain a financial and emotional foothold as an adult? How much of it just happens to you, and how much of it can you do yourself? What's it going to be like to be a father? Then last year, it was, how can we really begin to understand the world around us? If we want to get involved in our communities, where can we find the doors, and what can we bring to the table? Are there tools that we already have that could be of use in places we'd never considered? I don't know all the questions that we're going to ask this year, but I do know one of them. How do we make progress happen? How do we really do it? What does the business of moving forward look like up close? Through my conversations with the New Hampshire Theater Project, we've already suggested on this show that art itself can be of great help empowering people and changing minds, but Robert articulated exactly how in a more succinct way than I'd ever heard. Now, I know I just said that you can't think. I'm definitely going to use that in the podcast, but sometimes you can't help it. In fact, I liked it so much, I'm going to play it twice.
Because what ends up happening is you've got some folks who can say things that they can't say in conversations easily. And you've got other folks who can hear things that they can't hear in conversation.
And it was precisely this line of thinking that led Naji to the decision to take this play that he'd already written and previously staged in Brooklyn, The Bus Stop, and mount a brand new production way up here. But first, I asked Naji and Robert a question I've been thinking about for a while. So, okay, as I have become more aware of the issues and more active in my community, it started to feel like other people are doing the same thing. Maybe I'm just moving in different social circles now, but I don't think that's it. It's feeling more and more like something is happening. A movement is forming, an era is being defined, the groundwork is being laid for real progress. But I wonder if it's all in my head, or if it's just a reaction to Trump, or an attachment to Bernie, or some other wave that will break and roll back like the political movements of every generation or, every other generation before us. Very simply put, is something real happening here, or not?
Well, 8 years of Obama, right, and not to be political, allowed the world to sleep. Mm-hmm. Like, it allowed black people to sleep because we finally felt like we got what we wanted. Mm-hmm. Right, we finally got, like, the idea of a black president was like, whoa, what's that? And now we know it's possible. Mm-hmm. It helped white people, because racism is solved. Like, we gave them what they wanted, but this current administration, and not to speak about anyone, but just the how divided we are as a country. Everyone's paying more attention. Mm-hmm. And yeah, this could be a wave if we don't have a plan. Like, we don't realize that people are making so much money from us thinking that there is 2 different sides to this one coin. Like, when the reality is, I'm going to be honest with you, there's no difference between Democrat and Republicans. They're all rich. Like, they're all rich. None of them are, quote unquote, living their lives of struggle. So, like, this illusion of Pepsi and Coke, this illusion of, like, whatever, like, it just really does. Yeah, it just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It does not exist. Yeah. You got 2 New Yorkers, right? Like 2 billionaire New Yorkers. Like, come on, it does not.
If it goes that way, and I really hope it doesn't, but if it goes that way, that what you're saying will be very clear to a lot of people.
I hope so. I hope so. But there's some people that don't realize that.
Yeah.
that it's just the illusion of choice. And we as a people need to come together and understand that, and the key word is come together, that none of this is benefiting us. Us hating each other is not benefiting us. Us thinking that white people are destroying our opportunities is not helping us, right? You thinking that Mexicans are not helping, or are taking away your opportunities is not helping. Like, stop thinking that way. And stop thinking that your hurt is greater than the other person's hurt. We all got hurt. We all got pain. We all been let down by this government or this country or this system one way or another. Acknowledge each other's hurts and understand, why do you think a person like, not to get political, but why do you think a president like this is able to get into office? Because he was able to feed into hurt people who feel forgotten about in the Midwest. Like, who, you know what I'm talking about. These people that live in these, they're not, they got these big corporations. They can't they're opening up in their communities. They can't find jobs. They can't afford to live. And he was able to play on that. You know what I'm saying?
It was the least surprising surprise ever.
You get what I'm saying? But like, how can anyone that preaches hate, be elected? And it's because he gave hope to people that felt despair, and we ignored them.
Yeah.
We ignored them. We as the educated people, we as the progressive people ignored these people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. We
ignored them. We act like they're not a part of America too. And that's tough for me as a black person to say, but I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it. And we gotta do better. Like, we have to do better. Like, we have to start really realizing, okay, what is this country made out of? Okay, what does this person want? What do these people want? We need to come up and figure out a way to all progress as one people and get our goals out there and make a better country. Like make a better country. And we could do it. Because the divide is all an illusion. And not even in the context of a faith, but just as people. Yeah. Because we need a better America right now. You deserve a better America. I deserve a better America. It's not doing right by either one of us right now. So how do we get there together? You as a white man, me as a black man. How do we get there together? And it's definitely possible. And realizing that it has been attempted before, and they take it out of our history. They take out the white abolitionists. They take out when black ex-slaves and poor farmers were unified to literally try to stick it. And then you have Plessy versus Ferguson. Like, they take all that out of history so that you don't know that it's possible for us to really come together and really change this country. My optimism really is what makes me really passionate is when I see these children that exist today, because they really don't see color the way we do. They really don't see, they don't really look at each other the way we do. And I really pray and hope that, and I'm talking about the 8 and 9-year-olds that are around today, and even the 5-year-olds and 4-year-olds, like, they're just so smart. They're smarter than us. And I really pray that they save this world, because I feel like it's in them. And we need to do everything we can to show them that they're all the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt that way about, I have 2 kids, and I have friends who are like, I wouldn't want to bring children into this world kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Think about climate change and all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. And I understand that feeling, but I think I came to that decision to have children. And it really was a conscious decision. My wife and I were married 10 years before we had kids.
Wow.
We got married young. But, everybody thought we were going to start having kids right away because we got married at 21. We were like, no, psych. But anyway, I do look to my sons as man, you guys are going to do this. You're going to do it. The best I can do is lay enough of a foundation for you that you can really do this. And local involvement too is something that I'm coming to late, mm-hmm. and I'm trying to instill in my children as early as possible. Think locally, get involved in your community, know your community, know as many people as you can, you know?
I think
That's true.
both these points I feel like are so important, and thinking about how for children, I think that in order for us to make significant change, it has to happen at all levels.
It does.
But the level that we have the most control over and the most input on is the local level, right? And it is with the children, right? So when thinking about if we can create an environment where children can feel empowered, where youth can feel empowered to read their reality and look around and say, okay, this needs to be improved. This is this is how we can improve it, right? And also they have a fearlessness, right? Right, because they don't have the disappointment that comes with oh, I tried that and it didn't work, right?
Yeah.
So and so they have, but also as adults being able to create an environment for them where they can actually be truly empowered, right? Be the buffer when it needs to be a buffer in those things as they gain strength, right? And then as they gain strength, be willing to follow their lead, right? So I think that's where the interesting combination comes, right? Because we have to do both those things. And to have our children really be able to look around and see the world differently, start off with the oneness of humanity, with their friends, look around in their community, and as adults create the kind of community where they're actually seeing that, right? Where they're actually seeing different what quote unquote different kinds of people, where they're seeing all kinds of people in their lives as part of their community. And I feel like to heal division begins, I guess even ultimately in the home, right? But then it's between homes. It's between families and configurations of people locally. And then it's beginning to see, oh, I live in this little town. I'm invested in this little town, right? Or I'm in the seacoast. And it grows from there. And I think as we begin to see those possibilities. And also, I think one of the things for me that's so important is that we actually don't have the luxury right now to focus purely on one thing.
No, we don't.
Right,
we can't say that one thing is more important than the other.
Yeah,
it has to be all efforts at one time. Yeah, you're right.
And I think that also extends to us as individuals, right? Because if I think it's easy to fall into a trap of thinking about, well, I'm going to be social activist, right? And I'm going to think about changing conditions and not worry about my inner life. Or it can be very easy in the society, maybe easier to think, oh, what's going on with me? Right, I'm going to just think about me, right? Yeah. It seems like both have to happen at the same time, right? I have to be thinking about my own growth all the time, but in service to community, and thinking about making community and society better. I have to be, and those work completely together, right?
Yeah.
We aren't separated from our environment in any way.
That's good.
For me, the way it happened for me, I think, was a lot of I felt like I had to do a lot of work on myself, right? And once I felt okay, I figured it out. I'm good now. All my problems solved forever. Now I can focus on the exterior world. That's how I thought it was going to go. I thought it was going to be fix me, then fix the world, And now I kind of see that it's actually they're not mutually exclusive processes. They have to keep happening at the same time.
Over and over again. You never arrive.
Yeah.
You never arrive.
What a drag.
Yeah, you never arrive. But if you think about, and just to bring this up, if you think about, if you never arrived, King and Malcolm X never arrived. When you see the end of their lives, their last days, where they were completely in different points, from where they started off at.
Yeah.
If you think about Martin Luther King, when he started off, it was about civil rights for black people. Right? And, using the same toilet, use this. But right before he died, he started the Poor People's Campaign. That included poor whites, poor Native American, poor Latinos, poor black people. He cared about everyone. He changed his mission, and he talked about the Vietnam War. He started, it's completely different. Same thing with X. It was by any means necessary, the white man's the devil. By the time he got to the end of his life, he was praying with white men that had blonde hair and blue eyes, and said that I'll take any help for this cause. We never arrive, and even the points that we feel strongly about today, 20 years from now, hopefully they evolve into something else, Well, we care a lot more about something else that, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Something that we're not considering right now. Someone that we're not considering right now. Someone that we're forgetting about right now. So, I
talk about the stuff that's erased from history, by the way, too.
Yeah.
Those aspects of both.
But why?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I mean, it's funny that we're sitting here talking about the oneness of people and everything, because it seems like you're right, that's the part that gets erased.
That's the only part that gets erased, right?
The part where people turn and say, by the way. The part where Martin Luther King says, by the way.
Yeah.
Poor people of all walks of life. Yeah. Why is that part?
Why is that?
Why are we not seeing
why
those
are we not seeing those
textbooks?
And why are we not seeing when ex-slaves and poor whites came together after slavery? Why are we not seeing that? Why don't we ever look at the Reconstruction era? Why don't talk about abolitionists and or the white people that were burned and killed during slavery, and not to create a white savior complex, but we don't talk about it at all.
It's hard to even remember the presidents from the Reconstruction era.
We don't even. We go straight from slavery to. So you would think that Martin Luther King was an ex-slave. The way we go straight from slavery to Martin Luther King and civil rights, it just does not make sense.
I could do like founding fathers, and then it's like some people. Andrew Jackson was in there.
Andrew Jackson and Lincoln.
50 years.
Kennedy.
McKinley. Yeah.
No, you got Roosevelt. You got Roosevelt because you got the Great Depression. I told you it was a while before we got around to talking about Najee's play.
So now that we've solved the world's problems, at least we have a path forward.
I think you're gonna have to split this up into 2 episodes.
Saving the world and the bus stop.
Let's talk about the bus stop. So actually, I finished reading it last night. And,
what'd you think?
I thought it was great. So what I love about a lot of theatrical productions, right, is like just sort of economy of storytelling. And so, I remember when I first saw your play and it said the bus stop, I was like, oh, I hope the whole thing takes place at a bus stop. And then I started reading it and I was like, it does! I like this! But why don't you describe this play. Let's start by just talking about, what's it about?
So The Bus Stop is a play about 5 African-American women waiting at a bus stop. And the bus takes them to a prison where their male loved ones are incarcerated. The reason why I got the idea for writing this play, one time I was sitting in the park. It was night. it was just by myself. And it just came to me, and I just took a note on my phone. But it took me 4 years to write the play. It didn't take me 4 years to actually sit down. It just took me 4 years to actually sit down and write it. I wasn't mentally in the place to write it. But once I sat down and wrote it, I wrote a 4-hour play in 3 months. And I just couldn't stop writing. I was addicted to it. But the reason why I wrote the play was because my parents had me at 16 years old. And my father, 3 months before I was born, he killed someone. And he was in prison for most of my life, and up until I was 15. And I remember waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, getting bathed by the stove, my mom washing me, getting dressed, half asleep, getting in a cab, taking a cab to this bus stop that was on the corner, and it wasn't an official bus stop. It was just a place where this prison bus met us on Flatbush and Fulton Street, and we would go to McDonald's, get me some hash browns. You see a bunch of women there with their bags and chips and stuff for the men that were in prison, and we would get on this bus. And I just imagined if there were conversations that were being had by these women, because for the most part, I was too young to remember. And it was the 90s. What would those conversations have been like? And I put my mother's story in there through Isabella. But the rest of it was just people I knew. And not their stories necessarily, but the way that they felt about what was going on. I mean, I was raised by a woman. Didn't have many positive male role models in my life. So, my connection to black women has been them sitting around the kitchen or anywhere that they were, and just talking about their lives and their children and this and their hurt and their pain. And sometimes these real moments will come out. And so that's what the play is. It's literally these black women having the freedom to just share their point of view on their world. So I'm not a black woman.
Honestly, one of my questions was going to ask you, because they say, write what you know, right?
Yeah.
How did you sort of access those voices? But it sounds like you had access to them.
They're in me. I mean, like, my grandmother raised me because my mother was 16. And my mother definitely raised me. But my grandmother was definitely a large part of that, because she was the one that picked me up from school and watched me while my mother was at work. My Aunt Patsy, she raised me too. My other grandmother raised me, and my Aunt Elizabeth raised me too. I dedicated the play to all five of them. They're five completely different women, and I just this is the stories I had. Like these are the voices that I remember so clearly, because they're just such a large part of my life.
Yeah, and what I think is really interesting about the play is the way that you're right, that the conversations will shift. They'll be talking about Tupac, and they'll be talking about sometimes they'll be talking very specifically about the prison system. You have a character who gets introduced a little bit later, Mahogany, who's on her way to becoming a civil rights attorney, and so she has the ability to speak very specifically about the prison system. And what I think is so interesting about it too is that although each of these women is affected by this prison system and by these men that they love or don't love who are incarcerated, they all have different perspectives. And I think each character's the integrity of their perspective is maintained, right? Like, Mahogany doesn't really convince anybody of anything.
She doesn't convince anybody of anything. It's just, they know what they know and they accept it. That's dope. Yeah.
And I think that's important. I think I guess when I first, again, started reading the play, my two thoughts were like, is it going to take place all at a bus stop? I hope it does. And in what way will it try to persuade the audience of its argument? And the way it does is it doesn't really, right? There's several different opinions that are all offered, and various characters will agree or disagree with that perspective, and then that's it.
But that's life.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny? You know what's funny about that? When I would sit back and watch it, there were certain people, because you're talking about Beverly and Mahogany, the way they go back and forth about the prison system. There were certain people that were amen, amen to what Beverly was saying. Oh, what the hell? How can you amen that? But that's like, as a writer, you don't want to persuade anybody of anything. You just want to present the two arguments as clearly and as good as possible. You have to remain objective. And when these characters are speaking to you, not one voice is more important than the other. And understanding that all these voices play a role in the story. Like, I wasn't more committed to, and you shouldn't know my argument by the end of reading the play. You shouldn't know. I mean, now from talking to me, you probably know, okay, I'm more of a Mahogany type of person, but from reading the play, you should know, because both should be equally as strong.
So one thing that happens between scenes is there are letters, and one thing I had a question about is, how is that staged? How are the letters
So the letters will be staged and by lighting. The woman will sit there, sometimes read parts of the letter, but there are men that come in and read these letters. So you actually hear the voice of them, and you see them interacting. You see the emotion of the woman. When I first thought about doing it, when I wrote the letters, I thought it would be a video recording with dancing, and then one man would be dressed as a slave, one man would be dressed as a chain gang man, one man would represent like the prison system today. I had this creative way of doing it, and it would be a dance piece, and I was like, oh, okay. But then the director last time was like, well, why don't you get somebody to actually read the letters and show them? And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Let's try it. And we called in a couple of men, and we had them read the letters, and that was the most powerful part of the play for me. Because, and I'm not gonna lie, my father would write me letters while he was in prison. So I would never respond to them. But those letters honestly represent the letters that he wrote to me. Even though some of them are love letters, sometimes he told me how much he loved me, and I just could not respond. And I remember would go back and read these letters sometimes. I was like, oh man, he was pouring his heart out. Like this was his way of showing that he cared about me. So that I put that same energy that I felt when I read those letters into these letters. And at one point he did stop writing letters because I wouldn't respond. I would never write him back, but for a long time he tried. Yeah.
It warrants mentioning, for those that are unaware, that New England in general is not a racially diverse region. 1.2% of the population of Maine is black. That's about 18,000 people. That's not nothing, but there's 1.25 million white people. So, this was originally staged in Brooklyn, right?
It originally stayed in the west, in the village.
Okay, and now it's being staged in Elliott. How do you think? What? I know you don't know yet how the audience is going to react, although you have some idea of how it's going to go. How do you think it's going to land differently? What's the main difference going to be? The audiences that you're going to get here versus the audiences you got.
In New York, you preach into the choir. Like when we did it in New York, there's a church, loads of people came with the nice suits and the nice hats. We got lots of amens. We got lots of yelling back at the. It was like this crazy energy. Even though the crowd was very diverse, if you were a white person coming in, you kind of felt like you walked into church.
Yeah.
I think people are going to listen very closely, and they're going to think about people that they don't normally think about. And I think what I noticed about New Englanders, am I saying it right? You guys just think very hard about what you're like. You don't respond very quickly. Like even when you're mad, like it's just everything is just thoughts. Like with y'all, like it's like y'all live in this world in your head. Whereas New Yorkers, we're just like, I'm mad, I'm this, I'm that. Like y'all just like, oh, okay. And you see it processing. It's like all of y'all like that. It's like all y'all live in your heads. Y'all don't respond quick. I think that's what's gonna happen, but that's what I want. I don't want people to feel sorry for black people and what black people go through. I want people to find themselves in these characters, find healing in these characters, think greater about what they can do to help this world.
I asked Najee what happened when his father got out of prison. He compares his perspective to a character in his play, Mahogany, who understands the cruelty and the injustice of the prison system at a macro level and speaks eloquently about how the for-profit motivations of the industry cause black men to be targeted, but she can't quite bring herself to forgive her own incarcerated father. Your father got out when you were 15, you said?
Yeah, 15.
What happened? Did you connect with him then?
No. I mean, and he's going to one day hear this, and I love him, but it was difficult.
Yeah.
And I am Mahogany. Like, that's me. The struggle that she went through with her father is the struggle that I'm still going through with my father. And not blaming him, but understanding where he is in this world. Understanding, but I love him still. When he got out, I wish there was some kind of counseling that was provided to me, for me and him, to help the relationship go further, because it was life-changing, and everyone thought I should be happy, but I was scared, and I had no one to tell me it's okay to be scared. So I shunned him, I pulled away. I felt like he was interrupting my life. I felt like I had to now give authority to someone that never had that authority before. This is my father. When you think about all the things that a father is supposed to be, it was tough. And he came out, he had a family immediately. He had a wife, he had a child. And it was like, I didn't have a place in his world, And I whether that was the reality or not, it was how I felt at the moment. So I did whatever I can to make my life business as usual. And it wasn't until he lost his family, about 2-3 years later, that's when he started reaching out harder. But he was already out of prison for like a few years. And that shit was hard. I'm sorry to curse on your podcast, but I don't know if you got elderly listeners. But
we can believe that.
Okay, but it was so hard. Oh my God, it was the hardest thing in the world, and that's a play within itself. It was the hardest thing in the world because I didn't want him in my life. And the first argument that we actually had, and I hung up the phone on him, or he hung up the phone on me, was about my high school graduation. Because at this time, he had already been out for a while, and he wanted the ticket to my high school graduation. I had family coming. I felt like there were more people that deserved to be there than him. And he was like, oh, I don't get a ticket. I was like, you don't deserve a ticket. Like, we got into this huge argument about it, and we didn't speak for a year, maybe 2 after that. He went back into prison, and it wasn't until he kind of got out. I mean, I would see him at events and completely ignore him like he wasn't there. Like, treat him like he wasn't a person. And I wondered why that anger was in me, and I could not fix it, because you're talking about a very religious person. I was a very religious person at this point. I preached forgiveness. I've helped. I went to Guatemala, laid hands on the sick, and helped and gave to the poor, but I could not get over this issue about my father. And that was hard. Because there was a contradiction there. That I can love the world, but I couldn't love the man that helped put me on this earth. Even though he was trying to love me. But I was so focused on what he couldn't give me instead of what he needed from me. And our relationship now is not perfect, but it exists. I kind of keep my boundaries for various reasons. But I love him, and I don't think less of him. And in fact, I think he's very strong. And I don't think he knows that I think that. But I do think that he's very strong. The same way I do my mother. I just think that they weren't done right by. And there's just generational curses. But in order for me to break those generational curses, I have to build genuine relationships with my parents. And there's so much more to this story that I probably will never share out loud. But change is not an event, it's a process, right? So as I evolve, as I become better, hopefully we will become closer. And as I have children, hopefully he'll be involved in their lives. And we can one day, I accepted that he can never be the father that I needed. And that's kind of how I relied on my spirituality, as, you know, I didn't have the father that I needed, so I depended on God. But I could be something for him. And the relationship could be just that magical or as important or significant. Yeah.
That's our show for today. Music in this episode was mostly courtesy of our new piano, which was a gift from Bob Trundle. Thanks, Dr. Trundle. I also want to thank Jeff Perkins, Lori Waltz-Gagnon, Todd Colby, Genevieve Aishel, and Caroline Kendall. And thank you to Tom and Tim for writing really lovely reviews about this show on Apple Podcasts. A day apart, no less, which doesn't make it any easier to tell you guys apart. Obviously, at this point, it's hard to say for sure when performances of The Bus Stop will be staged, but it's currently scheduled for April 10th through 19th at Greenacre Baha'i School in Elliott, Maine. You can go to tbs.eventbrite.com for tickets and information. We recorded this interview a couple of weeks ago, and in fact, a lot more has happened since. At least, Naji and I made a lot of grand plans before we pushed pause on the world. I hope we'll get to move forward with them soon. Stay safe out there. Thanks for listening. We'll be back.